This is just a very basic overview of WordPress. There's lots of other videos or places you can read online to get into more depth on things. But for the most part, once you've logged into the site, you end up seeing the dashboard. It typically takes you to the dashboard and then shows you this kind of column with all the different tools or modules that you can use within WordPress. This home screen will sometimes have some kind of an error message, where this one's trying to say, hey, please donate to my account because you're using my plugin. Here's a message in here that's saying, would you like to receive some premium support? You can come in here and you can try to turn these things off, but they'll still show up from time to time. I would just ignore them. You also see kind of a welcome from WordPress type thing where it's got a link to some places where you typically would do some very minor things. An at a glance section, which is telling you how many posts that are on the site right now, how many pages it sees, the ability to track of what was most recently done. Here are comments. These are the three that came with the theme. This is the queue for the comment for the discussion section, and in this particular case, I just turned this one off. So if you were to look at this and decide, oh yeah, this would be fine, you could hit the approve button and then it would immediately pop up on the site where the person had tried to write it. These two are already approved, and if for some reason in hindsight you went back and said, you know, I don't want to have these, then you could just hit unapprove, or you could go ahead and decide this is just a bunch of junk or trash, throw it away. A little note about any upcoming WordPress updates. If you don't like seeing all these things when you start up, you could modify the site by clicking the screen options. You often see a box like that up here in the top right corner. You could say, look, I don't want to see the welcome section. I don't want to have the quick draft section. I don't want to see the upcoming WordPress news. And I don't even really want to see the at a glance, the overview. Just show me the most recent activity that's on the site and anything that I kind of should do, like approve or disprove any kind of comments. Each one of these things, though, that we're going to typically use this semester are typically going to be under this post heading, media, or pages. We're rarely going to have to come down to any of these other things other than maybe setting something up once. I'm going to run through some of these different things in different short videos, but for right now, let's just go to the settings section. This is kind of one of the first ones you do when you're setting up your site. Let's just pretend that we've just installed WordPress. You could come back in here. A lot of times it just puts in my happy site or welcome to the world, but I already set this up when we were getting started. So here's the site's title. Here's the tagline where we can break it apart and actually not see it all scrunched together. It's just reiterating where the URLs for this thing are, what the email account is that's associated with this. So this is where any email that somebody sends you from like a comment form or if a contact form where you're asking people to like help submit a story idea, this is where it should end up going. You can change the date format if you don't want to have it this long form. Some people really want one of these shorter things. Or if you want to change how it's displaying time or beyond military time. If you make any changes, hit the Save Changes tab. Again, almost all these things in settings you typically just set up once, and then you can walk away from the site unless you have some kind of other issue. The Writing tab is just something that pretty much sets up by itself. The default post category, like if you forget to assign a category when you're making a post, rather than it pushing it into one of the ones you have, it's just going to put it in the uncategorized thing. If you don't click the button to tell it that it's a special format of a post, like we have to do when we're doing a gallery or when we have a huge video in the header of the thing, it's just going to leave it as a standard post, which is good because that's the most common kind. Post via email is a section that we'll come back and look at later. It actually has a bunch of little steps to set up, but this would be a way that you could actually, from an email system, post a draft of the post at least straight to WordPress without having to log on and create the post within it. I don't think we changed anything, so we'll move on to the next thing. Reading, again, this is another thing that you typically just have to set up once. A lot of times when you do a fresh WordPress install, it'll go to just a list of all your posts, but in our case we want to create a static page. At this point, this is just that temporary page that says like this site coming soon. But you can select whatever page you want it to be so that when someone goes to the name of your URL, www.whatever.com, that's where they go see the thing first. So it's set up not to go to the post page first, but to go to like a home page of a website. we'll see some differences of what it looks like if you have more than a certain number of posts in a string. It'll automatically add down across the bottom a button where people can hop from page 1 to page 2. And I think that that's just fine. It makes the pages short so that people don't have to scroll so far. On the other hand, if for some reason you ended up with 11 or 12 posts in a category, then that's kind of dumb to have people look at a whole page and then to click at the next button just to get to 1 or 2 more. So maybe you'd want to come back and modify this and change it to 15 or something like that. This button here, discourage search engines from looking at the site. We're leaving that off until we have a few more things really done and we've had a few posts. Then we'll unleash this. But otherwise, we're just going to leave it as is for right now. The discussion section is going to mean that we're going to have to come back and talk about this from time to time. But basically, the way it's set up is that all comments that people leave on the site, which is generally just under your post articles, go to a queue, just like that thing we saw on the home page, waiting for you to approve or unapprove them, unless you want to change it, unless you want to say, hey, look, once I've cleared a person, let them just keep continuing to post so that we don't have to act as a buffer. Or you can shut the buttons off here so that nobody could post any type of thing. Either way, it's just fine. You could change the little avatar that would be associated by the post author's name. A lot of different little things, but we'll come back and look at this section of the discussion later when we'd also be talking about possibly adding more users to the site. The media section, it's normally pretty straightforward. Every theme is going to install something a little bit different. All this is saying is, look, you may be uploading a really big picture, and that's great. Sometimes you need it. But I'm going to go ahead and automatically create some very small versions of it. Well, a couple of small versions and then one pretty good sized one. And what I'm going to do is that way if you ever ask to just run a thumbnail or a very tiny version of the picture, rather than taking the time to load the entire one, the site's going to do the best it can to pull it from a smaller one. And that way it's just not always shoving up the data from the largest image possible. But different themes have different parameters you can set. And some of them are complicated and they'll have like 10 different sizes it'll create. The permalinks one, again, you're probably never going to come back and set this after you've made your initial decision. What this is set up to do is it's going to post the links as the name of the post. So in this case, it's the name of the site, and perhaps the headline is just called sample post. Well, that's pretty short right here, but sometimes if you have a really long headline, the length of it could be this long. And from an indexing or database point of view, if you have a site with hundreds or thousands of posts, that may be kind of time consuming to look through. You might actually have some kind of a system that clocks, like every week it gets a new number. Like perhaps this week it starts with the number 12 and then it's just counting that this is the third post in week number 12. And then in another week, a year later, it might end up being something very, very different. See, even though this name right here is very short, same length as this one is right here, sometimes you might have some kind of system set up where in a way, you just want, no matter what someone clicks on the site, what's going to display in the URL would be a really short name for the site and then perhaps just 123 or something like that for your archiving purposes. But we're going to have so few posts that that really doesn't matter. And that is really the end of just looking over the very basic intro to WordPress and to the settings function.